All right. Welcome, everyone, to Leadership Lab. My name is Brad Kelsey. We got a great one lined up today. If you are interested to learn about business mindset, leadership, all the type of things that everyone would want to do to be able to get going in business, do we have the guest for you? We have none other than Craig Major. He is running the largest startup community in Canada, which is pretty exciting. And Craig, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Brad. I'm excited to have a great conversation today.
Yeah, I love having conversations with people that are in business and with the mindset that you have. And I know just in everything that I picked up from you, looking into your background and our interactions and the people that have interacted with you, I've been looking forward to this one. So thanks for being here. So just as we start out, I wanted to kind of let you share your journey a little bit. I mean, yours was one that's been very interesting. I mean, you've gone through several things. I know you had a corporate career, then you transitioned, and you've been in business a very long time for yourself. What brought you to the Craig that we see now?
I'm not sure where to start there. I've done a lot, like you said, corporate. I'll just do a brief kind of synopsis there, and we'll get to where I am now. I was a chief technology officer at Mercer Human Resource Consulting. I was senior director of architecture and planning at Deloitte and Touche, rolling all their technology across the country. I was program director at Davidson Henderson, doing implementation for the big six banks. I was program director at Bell Mobility, doing their wireless activation center. So if you ever had to do changes on your cell phone plan with Bell Mobility, went through the software I was running. And I just got tired of working. I'll be completely honest. I got tired of working for people who I considered to be not my intellectual equal, to put it in a nice way. And I just didn't want to give my best time and my best ideas to people who wouldn't, use them. And that kind of led me to starting my own thing. And I started a business, which was called Simple Suitor, back in 2015. And I went around to all the different meetups and startup things that were happening to find out which ones were good and which ones weren't. And I met my co-founder of what was at the time called Startup Toronto, Gabriella Chan, and she was running a series of town halls with Startup Canada and the city of Toronto to figure out what the ecosystem was missing. And we hit it off right away and ran what was Startup Toronto the first year together. We rebranded as TorontoStarts somewhere along the way, but it's just me running it. I have a new business partner now, and we're kind of owned by RC Events and Services. But basically, we help entrepreneurs, and I love working with business owners versus employees. And I think that's a huge difference because I can actually make a difference in their businesses and in their lives versus someone who's just working for a company that's really not going to have the same type of impact when you're talking about an enterprise. And that kind of thing is very powerful, and it gives you a lot of energy, and it's very rewarding.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's very similar to me. I had a 17-year corporate career, and then I started looking at it going, I had bigger dreams, that you get going in it and you have bigger dreams. Like you're growing up as a kid, you're in high school, even in university, you're kind of like, I'm gonna kill it. And then you come out and you got to pay bills, right? And then you get to that point where your dreams start to fit your income or your salary at the time and who you are. And then you just get in this cycle. And I looked at it and it was kind of later than a lot of people would do it. And I said, if I'm going to work the next 20, 25 years, I want to do it building something for myself rather than for somebody else. And where you were saying your ideas and who wouldn't use them and why waste them in those areas. And not to mention you wouldn't get that reward either, the full reward of it. I started looking at what type of revenue I was driving for the corporation I was working for and what my team was driving and what my regions were driving. And I thought, I may not be able to do all this, but man, if I could even do 20% of it, I'm gonna be in pretty good shape. Even 10% of it, I'm gonna be in pretty good shape. So that's where the seed was kind of planted, and then I ended up I ended up in a completely different industry, unexpecting that, but that was kind of what it was. So I'm curious, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had in getting started on your own when you made that shift from corporate?
I think there's a huge shift in the mindset, which is if you don't do it, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. You're in corporate environment, someone else's job. If I don't do it, someone's going to do it, whatever. But literally, working for yourself, starting something, you have to do everything. There's no passing the buck. There's no one else to blame if at the end of the day something's not done or you forgot to do something. So that took a while to kind of ingrain in yourself. And then the flip side of it is it takes a while to not beat yourself up because there's 1,000 different things you want to get done in a day as an entrepreneur, and you're only going to get 100 of them done. And you're at the end of the day, you got to be okay. I accept that, but let's focus and make sure we're focusing on the things that are actually going to move the needle tomorrow. And it's okay if we don't make the 1,000, but let's make sure that 10 of those things we do are really important.
Our minds are always going, aren't they? Ooh, that's a
Yeah.
good idea. That's a good idea. We get to be kind of squirrels.
Yeah, and the shiny object or the squirrel. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah. No,
and
you touched on earlier that you were saying liked dealing with working with entrepreneurs or people that are, would be entrepreneurs versus say employees. Can you elaborate a little bit on what is that mindset difference or what do you mean by that specifically? Like why do you like working with those people with that mind versus say an employee mind?
so I would include, say, the first 5 or 6 people in a company when I say working with founders because they kind of have that mindset. I'll give you an example. I teach classes, workshops, different kind of things, and I had a couple of people come from a company, and the one person was interested, and the other person was sat back the whole time like this, like, somebody told me to come here. I don't want to be here, and just didn't want to learn. Versus, say, a business owner who wants to take these concepts and apply them to the business. They're not going to sit back like this. They're going to say, all right, I understand how you did that for this company you were talking about, but how do you do that for my mobile haircutting service? Let's figure out how. And you start digging down. They lean in versus the employees. I don't want to do extra work. I don't care if the company makes an extra 10%. I don't, versus, the owners are like, I want to make my business successful. I want to be efficient. I want to make sure I'm focused on the right things. I want to make sure I'm moving the needle. I'm building the right culture that, all the things are in the right spaces. And if you can help me with that, then I'm going to give you my time and attention. And that's completely different than, like I said, an employee. And they like it's lean in and ask a lot of great questions. And that's when you have some really good conversation.
Yeah, I feel that you get into that you see that mentality with employees that they do just enough not to get fired and they don't have that like I'm gonna go and make it happen. And even in corporate, it's funny when I think back for me, I kind of saw some of those things, I guess the entrepreneur's side in me even in corporate. Like I was just telling my nephew last week, we're at the cottage and I was talking about when I worked at the marina in high school and the owner told me, close at this hour, but the competition that was across the water that I could see, they were open later. And I was like, I basically was off the clock. I couldn't go to the owner of the marina the next day and say, hey, I put in another 2 hours. He wasn't because he told me to close, but I stayed open because I was like, I wanted us to do well, even though I was still an hourly worker. It didn't matter to me. But it was funny when I think back of that. And he said, "You really did that?" I said, "Yeah. I mean, I just wanted the business to do better. I wanted to, and, even in my corporate, I stayed later, and when it didn't really, nobody would have said to me, "Hey, you need to do this or you need to do that." Like I just wanted my in my corporate career, I want us to do better. And I think when you see those qualities in people, you kind of know that they can, if given the opportunities or kind of the incubator that you're creating there, you can really get them to take another level in their life and do different things if they're willing to take that step out, right?
Yeah. And I'm often asked, what's the difference between a successful entrepreneur and an unsuccessful entrepreneur? And my answer is always doing the uncomfortable things. The person who's going to be successful will jump off a building, will parachute into a conference, will wear a pink flashing suit to get attention. And the person who's unsuccessful, they're intimidated, they won't do that. And to see those things. The person that will go those extra miles and do those crazy things or do whatever it takes, they will be successful because they want to learn. They're going to do whatever. They don't care about the success is more important than me being embarrassed.
100%. It's the whole like caring what other people think. It's the biggest inhibitor to people's success, right? And I'm a firm believer of that, and really had to overcome a lot of that. I read this book once called 177. Actually, multiple times I've read it, but the 177 Secrets to the World Class. And the first one is how we're addicted to the approval of others. It's actually an addiction, and we so are, and that's the biggest killer of dreams out there is that we're addicted to what other people think. And if we can get over that, I don't know if we ever really do, but if we can get to that point where we're, at least recognize it quickly, have a trigger and move over it and under it or around it, whatever, we can really see some development in our lives and see some things happen. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. Now, you have you have a huge community. What attracts so many people to your tribe, do you think?
Well, I've been doing this since 2000, the beginning of 2015. And I think one, it's consistency and it's authenticity. So I like to think that I run the best events in Toronto. I'm sure other event people will tell you differently, or you'll go to one event that's, a great event or whatnot. But specifically, I'm here to add value. Firm believer in giving people what they want. So if I'm going to have a panel, we're going to have some serious panel discussions, and I want panelists with opposite opinions, and I actually want them to argue. Most people don't want that, and they think I'm uncomfortable on the when I'm emceeing that. But I love it because you're getting real both sides of a very intellectual conversation, even if it's heated, and then you're going to get the audience to jump in. So I want not, I'm going to feed you softballs, that we're going to what I call smoke and mirrors. Hey, be successful, work harder, work smarter. No, let's get down to, you're going to learn something. You're going to make contacts. You're going to move your business forward at my events. It's not just going to be, oh, I didn't know what I learned today.
Yeah, that's good. And, you can tell that passion, like you're kind of going against the grain, like you say, the softballs. There's too much of that out there, right?
Absolutely. Like I'll start with the softballs just to warm people up. They get the voice in the mic. Who are you? What do you do? All right, let's get into it. How do you sell without sounding like a douchebag? Let's go. I literally do that. Like, oh, great. Because people want to know, they're afraid, just like you're saying. I don't want to be slick, I don't want to be this. And you got it. Once you start, then the actual honest questions come from the audience, the other people, but you kind of have to break the ice at first.
Yeah, so much like probing, right? Where it's like you ask somebody a question, it's a very 10,000 foot answer, and then the more you dig in, you're like, okay, then the real answers come out. And we always say like the first objection is never the real. That's not the real reason. What is it that you dig in and ask better questions, and you'll find out the true answer. So, um, now if I was an entrepreneur, Craig, trying to get my business off the ground, a new startup or something like that, or what would you do for me if I was to join your what if I was to work with you? What would you do for me?
Well, we have a bunch of different things. So we're a node onto ourselves in the startup community, but we're a node between nodes. You could start with one of our networking events. We do startup investor drinks every month, and that gets investors and startups together. It's open pitch, open bar. So you have a drink or two if you're into that. You don't have to. And then you can pitch if you want to the crowd, whether you're looking for customers or you just want to practice your pitch to investors, or, even if you're a developer and say, hey, I'm looking for this kind of work, come on out. So that's as soft. You're going to meet a lot of entrepreneurs. You don't know where to go. You're looking for advice, what educations, what incubators, accelerators, what courses are good. Start talking to the crowd. They've experienced it. It's the best place to go. Talk to me, great. I do free discovery calls. We'll figure out where you are, what makes the most sense. I have a different coaching packages and programs that will help people through, but we do a lot of free workshops, seminars. I have an accountability support group that I do every other Friday. Again, it's free, but it's invite only. We have automation workshops coming up to teach people how to find leads and how to get appointments and those kinds of things, but using AI to do those things. We have sales leaders coming in, teaching people how to do sales strategy and sales marketing plans. We have lawyers coming in, talk about how to defend yourself and think smartly about risk ahead of time. those are just some examples of the things we're doing. Those are free online things that people can sign up for. We're doing a more online hybrid, I guess, online and in person since COVID, just because it's easier. We are Toronto Starts, but we found a lot of people don't want to drive in from Cambridge. They don't want to, so we can do these things online and actually give more people access. So we have structured programs. I have specific courses for people, but I'd rather talk to people, find out where they are in their business, what makes the most sense. And a lot of times I'll be moving them on to someone else because that's where the best place for them is. Doesn't mean I won't help them, doesn't mean I won't, but maybe they need to be talking to Futurepreneur because they've got a great program that's free for your type of thing. Or maybe you should be talking to Antler, or maybe you should be, there's a lot of things going on. And I want to make sure you're getting the best support you can. And that's kind of, I have, again, all sorts of programs from people all the way through it. And I'm not here to sell my stuff. You can go to TorontoStarts.com and check out what we do, or come to one of our events, and happy to talk to you. But yeah, the whole point is to make sure that entrepreneurs are supported. And I have a saying that entrepreneurship is not a solo sport. So find your tribe, find your community, find the people that you can talk to when you've been banging your head against the wall for a week, or you're feeling depressed and you can't get out of bed because you're struggling. You need to have that support group, and that's what Toronto Starts is here for.
I think it's awesome. I love everything you just said there, because I think that entrepreneurship is a lonely road. It's funny when I talk to people, business owners, solopreneurs, things like that in my business, and I'm in the financial field, so we specifically, investments and insurance and things like that, and I'm helping, middle income Canadians do that. But what we do is we're helping our clients get in better, we're helping them, the market that needs it the most. But one of the biggest things I take pride in is I'm building a business here. I'm bringing people into the industry, and I'm helping them transform from employee to entrepreneur, and to think about what they could do for themselves, and not just work with my team, but work with my team to then have their own business where it's their own, like they have ownership. And it's so exciting to see people, we have a saying, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And when I talk to a lot of people outside of our group, our group, I hear them go, I go, oh, how's it going? How's it going? Like, congrats. Like, you've taken a move, you made a move. And there's always a bit of a pause where they're like, it's lonely. It's, there's a lot of frustration. Like you said, there's a lot of doubt. I don't know. And I think one of the biggest things that I picked up from what you were saying in your whole network is the network and the associations. And you're associating them with so many different people. And would you say that a big difference between corporate and entrepreneurs, like say the entrepreneur network and the corporate network, if you're in corporate's more kind of dog eat dog, right? Like, it's every person, man or woman, for themselves. And then you have, so there's something where people think they can't ask a business owner what they do, but or tips and tricks and things like that. But I find, in my experience, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people, a lot of business, they respect the game, the people, they respect the grind, they respect where the people are, and they're willing to share more than what you would think. Is that, like, would you find that,
Absolutely.
or no?
Those are some of the greatest conversations people have when they actually just I don't know how many times where I've had an event and somebody come up to me and say, I've been stuck for 6 months on the thing, and I just had this 10-minute conversation. They solved the problem for me, right? It's like, wow, and that's, if you keep it to yourself, those things never happen.
100%. Yeah,
And
it's so
like,
true.
it happens all the time. I remember somebody I was working with had a physiotherapy best to help people do workouts and track their workouts and send it back to physiotherapists and stuff. And I had him talk to a startup I'd been working with the previous year. And after they met, he came away with a whole different design because the other startup had, you know, gone through manufacturing and had to go 3 or 4 or 5 times for their product because sensors failed, because of this, because of that. And he showed him exactly, like, this is what you need to do. Don't do this, don't do that. That's going to break. We're going to do this. It completely changed the design, and with some experience in manufacturing, and was happy to do it. You wouldn't get that from a well-established business. And we're talking about, like, here you go, work with this guy, work with these manufacturing, use these sensors. I'll get you in touch with my supplier so you get better deals. fantastic.
And you're like, what? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like someone coming from another world of the employee landscape. They're like, what? Like that does who does that, right? You just
yeah,
don't. But the people all know that what they understand your start, and yeah, it's a totally we get that in ours too. It's like I'm like, okay, well go talk to that person about that problem because they're even better than I am. Go talk to them, and then they're like, but they have no vested interest in me. Like they're not going to give that. I'm like, they will. I'm not going to tell them to, but if they do or they don't, I don't know. But I bet you they do. And then people always come back overwhelmingly. Not only did they give me that, they gave me all this. Like I don't know why they did that, right? Which is pretty. It's a such a special thing that a lot of people just don't get it when they're in there and they stay lonely and they stay stuck, like you said, for 6 months when they could have just gone out there and started talking to people and solved it in 10 to 15 minutes, right? So.
absolutely. And I find when I'm at events, it's partly my job, if not mostly my job, is to find those people who aren't talking and inject them in conversations. So I find
Mm.
somebody standing there and is tentative, go up, talk to them, and then find a group of people, inject them in the conversation, and leave. And then I'll find that again because all it takes is one. Once they're in, they're comfortable talking to everybody. But again, it's pretty daunting when you come into a room of 100 people who are actively engaged in conversation and you're there by yourself and you're like, oh. And so if you're not socially dynamic enough to jump into a conversation of six people and you don't know anybody, it can feel pretty awkward. And I try to bridge that gap pretty quickly.
Awesome. I love that you do that. And I think in you doing that too, that also just builds their confidence and that person from day one, if they've attended enough of those, you watch them five, fifth, sixth, seventh event later, and they're gonna be like, man, that person's like a completely different person because they built that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I built that muscle. That's great. Now, Craig, you've been doing this for for quite a long time, and so how do you keep how do you get your motor running every day? How do you keep inspired, motivated? Like, how do you do that?
Well, we were talking before we started about we really love the interesting conversations we get to have with the business owners and the people in the community and subject matter experts. They really expand the way we think, really give us energy and the way we look at it. And definitely working with entrepreneurs, business owners gives me lots of great energy. They have lots of great ideas. They're very passionate about what they do. And being able to make a difference in their business is rewarding. Like I have a business partner who came on about a year ago and he comes to our events and when people leave and they're all really happy, this is a great event, this is it's really rewarding, that everyone's happy that they've got more than their value out of something. And when you're working with people and they're excited because you just gave them the idea that now they can go and apply in their business that thing they wanted to do so they can get more clients or get more revenue or do this, it's really rewarding. And when you see the look in people's eyes, it's just, yeah, there's nothing compares.
Yeah, I felt that too. It's pretty cool. And when you're not doing it for yourself, obviously we always start to do something for ourselves, like in business, entrepreneurship, all those things. But then it quickly shifts at some point where it becomes about other people. And to me, that's the greatest blessing on earth is like when you can do that. And the irony of it, you tend to get more for yourself when you're doing it for other people as well. Anyway, and that's not why we do it, but it's you get the fulfillment, but then everything kind of comes your way when you do that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. As a teacher, mentor, you find a lot of things you're saying are lessons you need to learn. It's just karma and how it works. But you may start this because, hey, I want to be a business or want to be a coach or want to make money. But this conversation is not that disappears in the conversations. It's about how do we, take this business? How do we brainstorm? How do we do the things that are going to move the needle forward? And everything else disappears. And that's what's rewarding about it is that nothing else matters. These are the things we need to work on, and let's just do them. I find myself when I'm talking, I put myself in the conversation. No, we need to do this. I'm like, okay, well, you need to do this, but
It's the collaborative. The collaborative
yeah,
comes in, right? Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
Now, do you find because of that, like how you've gotten into this and developed as a business person, that do you find that you are more intentional and you don't get caught up in the fluff? Do you identify the fluff quickly and go, this isn't moving the needle, but this would? Like, do you find that you identify that better than you would have, say, in your corporate career before?
I think so. It's also having being once removed. I find founders are deep into their business, and a lot of times it just takes somebody who's a little farther away to say, you know, you're doing a lot of work over here, but is it really making a difference? Because maybe you're working on something extremely technical that the clients don't need. Maybe we need, let's have we tested this? And I'm always an always be testing person. What's our testing? Does this make sense? Do the customers want it? Before we write code, before we make changes to our product, how do we confirm that this is indeed something that the customers want, that's going to be better, that's going to drive more sales, whatever the case may be? We need to test that.
And when you do that, like, what does that look like testing?
Well, it depends on the company. Um, I'll give you an example. I worked with Lego, and there was a small uh, group of entrepreneurs working inside of Lego, five or six. And they were trying to figure out, I don't know if you know much about Lego's augmented reality. As part of some of their packages, you can, like Ninjago, you can hold up your phone with the app. And if you have the Ninjago castle, there's a game. It comes to life. People are invading the castle, and you can defend the castle, and you can have teams. And they were trying to figure out what AR experiences uh, parents wanted for the kids that'd be willing to pay for the kids. Is this a point system? Is it I will pay premium for this Lego set because it has the AR, so that's worth 20% more? Or is this a add-on that you buy separately, $5? So an example was working with them to try and figure out all the different options. And then we actually went and did Apple Store locations with iPads and some of the experience with kids, where the kids got to experience the stuff where the games and whatnot. And we had iPads for the parents so they could take surveys based on this to give feedback to try and figure out what would be the most sense? What would they pay for? What kind of experiences? Do they want networked across? Do they want in the same room? Do they want? And that was very interesting. That's an example of, somebody who had money to do some things.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah, that's really cool. That's
so
really cool to get a better sense for versus going sinking a bunch of money down like product development and all this type of stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's not going to work. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah, you
very cool.
tested ahead of time. We got a lot of great customer feedback. They went back and changed their product and stuff as a result of that.
Man, I can imagine just that alone can be huge in helping what you can do to help people, not spend way too much time down the wrong road, right?
Yeah, and I mean, they had a little bit of money and had a relationship with the Apple Store, so they could do that. But sometimes it's standing on the corner across from Union Station at 8 o'clock. Well, I would suggest not 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd suggest 7, because the closer it gets to work hour, the less people will talk to you and the less people will look at you. So keep that in mind. If you're stopping people in the street to talk about stuff, the earlier the better, because the early people, they have plenty of time to stop and talk to you. They'll take whatever you're handing them. They'll chat with you. But I've done all of it. So, and you have different responses, because sometimes you're just trying to get a feedback on this level, at a gut level. You can do that in a couple hours, and sometimes you need something more.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Very interesting. So intriguing. What would you, when with the current economic landscape that we're in right now, Craig, like what sort of effects have you seen this have on business? Say people, startups, things like that. Lack of funding out there, different. Are there some more challenges? What would you say there?
Well, the funding game has changed. Um, a couple of years ago, we were less risk averse. We'd give more money. We want to see a lot of growth startups that we're just going to pay to grow them. Nowadays, we're looking for value startups as far as investors. We want to see bootstrapping. We want to see um, traction and growth. We want to see a cost to acquire a client going down. There's a bunch of things we want to see that we didn't care about 3 or 4 years ago from an investor point of view. So that has changed. But I think more and more as people get into the idea of a startup, the less and less they think that, oh, I have to have the next Facebook, the next Uber, the next, you know, I think people need to look at how do I build my brand and how do I make 100K with my business so I don't have to work for someone else, so that I don't get laid off by TD or Microsoft or whatever. And more people are thinking like that nowadays. And that's great because, you know, success is different for everybody, right? You don't need to be $1 billion business, but maybe you could start in your city and go to, for everybody listening, whatever city you live in, Google this: Toronto Starter Company Program, Brampton Starter Company Program, whatever. They'll give you $5,000 to start your company. They'll give you training, mentorship. You know, I know that's not a lot, but if you're just thinking about these businesses that I'm talking about where you just want to replace your income so that you can do your own thing and have a different lifestyle change, work with the clients you want to work with and still make some money, you can get started with these programs. And, you know, they're government funded. Why not take advantage of them?
Great tip. I love that. And you know what? Something you said kind of resonated with me. People kind of sit on the outside, like you say, and they think they gotta hit a home run. But there's kind of a ladder to it, right? I mean, you get in the game, get going at it. And then it's interesting how you talked about earlier, but the networking, the associations, all those things, all the people that you can connect with over time. And as well, it's funny how people that aren't in business very rarely like it seems like opportunities are scarce. But then when you're in business, then all of a sudden opportunities start coming your way. And why is that? I think it's just because you're in a different social circle, you're different networks, connections. And I remember a buddy of mine, it shook me, like it blew my mind to this day. Like he started this business, worked his butt off, got it going. It was something that his dad got. It wasn't his dad's business, but it was something his dad said, "Hey, you should buy into that." He did. He worked his butt off, built it really well, and then all this capital he had to put into it, and literally Magna comes to him, and it was complete. He was in Tool and Die, but and he was in Styrofoam, and then he ended up. Magna comes to him and says, "Hey, we're closing this, like they call it a fab, but they're closing this fab down, and it was for wood, and they have this machine that they must have spent like I don't know the numbers because I just don't know that industry well, but he said they offered him 10 cents on the dollar for the machine and said, we're just looking to close it down, get rid of it. And he said, I'll take it. And then he started doing wood for the same thing he was doing in styrofoam. And now, like that happened, he goes, literally, man, I was in that business for less than like everything, set up, install, everything. I was in that business for less than 20 grand versus the couple like the 100 and plus that was for his initial one, and all the time and effort he already knew what was going on, and then it came on his lap, and now it's the by far most profitable channel of his business that he has, and it's far out surpassed his styrofoam, which is kind of nuts to think about. But it's I love that story because it was just opportunities seem to come about to people that are out there, right? And what would you say are the biggest mistakes financially that you see people make in
Well,
business?
it's funny, just to get back to what you said, it's funny how the harder you work, the more opportunities come, and just, you know, get out there and start doing it. You're right about, you don't have to have the biggest idea, just an idea and start growing. You never know what's going to happen. And that businesses are cheaper to start now than they were 2 years ago, than they were 5 years ago, than they were 10 years ago. And there's so much you can do better now, uh, that and get started with a few $100 and almost nothing. You know, that would cost you thousands before. Uh, just make sure I got the question. What are the biggest mistakes?
Yeah, financially, that you see business owners that when they're starting out, that they make.
Honest, financial literacy is a huge problem among everyone, the populace as a whole. And it's the same true with founders. I find when I'm teaching my programs and stuff, when I get down to the finance part and we need to even do some simple balancing the books and stuff, their eyes gloss over. Nobody wants to do it. And the problem is that startups have this expectation that everything's going to go according to plan. And you have to sit back and say, listen, you really need to look at these numbers and say, 6 months from now, if you can't pay your bills and you don't know how you're going to pay your employees, and your wife's bitching at you because you haven't taken out for dinner and you don't know how you're going to pay the credit cards, are you going to be able to get out of bed and do this? You got to know what it's going to take and how long you're going to be in this situation and what you're going to need to survive. If you go stick your head in the sand and go la 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 la, it's going to be great, then it's not. And I think that's the biggest mistake people do, is they don't look at the reality. It's boring, it's tough. I hate doing the accounting stuff for my business. I avoid it. And I shouldn't, because you got to sit down and do it. Like, never mind. But that's the biggest problem, is they ignore the financial stuff. And the second biggest problem is they don't understand margins. They don't understand, okay, well, how long does it take to get the client, um, and have those meetings, get the stuff started, do all the work, and output the thing that you're charging $200 for. If that takes a week and a half, are you really making any money?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why you got to start. A lot of people, they don't price things properly. A lot of times, especially early stage startups, they price things around 40-50 bucks a month or something, when that's the wrong way to go. They honestly should be pricing things at $500 a month, and actually offer a white glove service for a fewer number of clients who are going to be much more happier with what they give them, because it's going to be fully integrated. They'll have the people and support, than the people who won't know how to do it at $40 or $50. And it's hard to have that mind shift from a startup.
So true. It's funny. You created an old memory for me. I remember in university, I started this, I'm from a lake community, a small town, and I started this bit. We had a cottage on the lake, and I started this business because I realized there was a need that people didn't like having to take their garbage to the dump when they were there for the weekend or on holidays, or they didn't. So like it was a pain for them. They had to go and get in their boat, take their garbage to take it, drive it to this dump they didn't want to be at, all this stuff. But with local for me, and then that kind of spawned. So that was the initial thought, and then it spawned to, odd jobs, painting, all those type of things, junk removal, you name it. But I remember I just started employee mindset thinking I want to make, at the time, $10 an hour. I was at university. I was in first year university. So I was like, I want to make $10 an hour. So I started with that. Then that was when the jobs came up. And I remember the first time I did a service for somebody. They're from the US. They cottage there for the summer. And he's like, how much do I owe you? I go, was this? I said, so about $15. He goes, son, you're ridiculous. He goes, here, he gives me 40. I was like, oh, no, that's way too much. Like, I was only here like a little over an hour. He goes, you realize the hassle that you saved me, and like I would have had to do it. He was giving it all. He goes, you're charging way too low. He goes, take it. And I was like, okay, I'm doing something wrong here. I'm providing a service. I'm not an hourly worker. I'm doing those things. And then I remember, it was a bed being delivered from Leon's, and taking it out to an island and then setting it up for them. And my buddy came with me, and then he saw what I quoted after it was done, and he was like, I can't believe you did. I said, dude, it was a service. Like we carried the bed, we did all that stuff, and it was interesting, on that mindset. You're so right on how people think of themselves. And I remember in my business, first time the gentleman talked to me, a person in marketing talked to me about making an offer. And he goes, well, what's your time worth? And I had an idea of return on time, but he's like, you're bringing on people into your team, you're mentoring them, you're training them. He goes, what value can you tell them before they join your team that you're giving them? And I literally looked at them with a deer in the headlight. I'm like, I have no idea. But then I started really looking at it, and it is, and came up with a value. And he's like, you need to have a value, man. Like, that's an important thing. So, yeah, very important. You struck a chord with me there, because it's very important to know what is your time worth, where is your time being allotted, and then you can then make sure that you're spending in the right places, and to keep moving the needle, and investing in others and so forth. Yeah, yeah, that was great.
And thinking like that, I just want to give another example, which is great, because I like people thinking outside the box and changing the way they think about something. I remember working with a startup, and they wanted to be the cheapest online tutoring service. And I'm just, great. Just Google cheap online tutoring. Thousands of them come up. So like, how are you going to compete with these? And, I said, here's what you do. You charge $400 a month. No one's charging it. You're not the cheapest. And you do after school unlimited. This is the unlimited homework offer. After school from 3 to 6, whatever mentor you want, whatever you need, we're going to get your homework done.
Yeah.
And people won't pay for that. And I'm saying, you kidding me? I have 2 kids. I got to cart my daughter twice a week to tutoring, pay $400 a month for someone to do this thing. If I can get home and she's done that, someone's tutored her, and we can have our relationship back again, I'm not fighting over this. That is worth so much money for me. And it changes people's mindset when you say, wait a minute, what do you do? You want to deliver that cheap tutoring service? Or do you want to be that person when that parent comes home, the kid's like, I done my homework, Dad. Like, great, let's go do stuff. Rather, I don't have to fight you anymore. Like, let's go.
I love it because yeah, what is the value, like that value to you that it's an intangible, the value of that relationship and not having to think about all the monotony that you don't want to do. It's such a big thing that you're willing to pay for, right? You're willing to pay for. Yeah. So that's such a great example. Yeah, such a great example. What would you say are the biggest reasons that people don't get into business for themselves?
Fear. Um, and some people don't. Some people like structure. They like to be told what to do. They like 9 to 5. I remember one of our first meetups early on. I was talking to a lady, and she came with someone else who was starting her own business, and she couldn't get her head around why anybody would do this. She just never could. And that's okay, because we have, the entrepreneurs are a small percentage of the population. So there's fear and just not understanding, right? I got to go do all this stuff and no one, I don't have a steady paycheck. I got to find customers. There's all these things I'm uncomfortable with. That's the one thing. And the other thing is what we touched on earlier is people who want to start their own business don't initially think, oh, I just want to make 60 grand a year or 100 grand a year. I got to find the next multi-billion-dollar thing that no one else is doing. And, I'm sorry to say, but that's not going to happen. I've I've been at events like this, happens to me all the time. Like they have this unique idea. They think they're unique. It's no one else has it. And I said, okay. I remember this particular time I was at an event, 300 people or so, just finished speaking. This person came up to me and said, I've got this unique idea. No one's got it. I'm good. Okay. I said, stand beside me right here. And all these people came up to talk to me. And after I turned to him, and they were just 5 people had the same idea. And I'm like, it is what it is. Like there's billions of people out there in the world. It's execution. Who's doing it? And I don't know a single business out there that doesn't have competition. So why would you think that you're going to come up with the only thing in the world that's never going to have competition that no one else is going to do? So you have to kind of get over that. And then go back to, the other mindset is imposter syndrome. Like you're saying, what's your value? I'll charge $10 an hour. I'll charge this. Really need to reflect on your customer, the value you're bringing them, and making sure. I'm a big believer in giving the customers what they want. If you can take a big pain away from them, they're usually more than happy to pay you for that.
Yeah, 100%. Hands down. Hands down. Yeah, no question, right? And I think a lot of people just miss that part of it. They think it's got to be this. They got to be this grandiose. It's got to be, everything's got to be perfect. It's like at the end of the day, if you're taking the pain away and you're doing it well, and they can trust you, then you've got something to work with there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do I mean, I know being an entrepreneur, Craig, that we always need to be growing and evolving and things like that. And what sort of things do you do to build your mindset? Like what sort of personal development plan have you had success with in the past? Are there any hacks that you have that have helped you along the way to do that?
Well, I'm always learning, and there's a number of, I'm going to say, systems I've put in place that force that. I'm always seeking speakers and mentors to come out to my events, to run workshops that I'm a part of and that I lead and I'm learning from. I'm always interviewing the best minds that I can possibly think of. I have podcasts. Who are these startups? Startup Talk. We do Silicon Scoop, which is all the kind of tech news that's happening today that affects you, from terms of service where people are stealing your biometrics to, Google now, what their latest thing is, their illegal monopoly and what's going to
Hmm.
happen.
Hmm.
And, future tech where we're talking about things that science and discovery that's going to happen 5 or 10 years from now that are just being discovered and how it's going to change stuff. Those types of things force me to research, look at companies, look at the startups, look at the technology. And I'm talking about it constantly. And then I get, like I said, with Startup Talk, we have founders come in and we're talking about the startup news of the day. And I'm getting it directly from the founders or the investors. And I think immersing myself with the smartest people I know, asking the questions, having these types of conversations all the time really keep me educated. Aside from that, as a coach, I'm just doing another coaching certification just because I like to keep myself up to date. I'll do this one, be happy, and next year I'll do another one from some other program because I always want to learn the latest techniques. How does someone else do this? What are the things I'm not doing?
And what do you say to the people that say, "Oh well, I don't think I could ever do that," or "I don't think I could ever learn that," or what are your feelings around that with that kind of limiting beliefs that a lot of people hold?
If you say you can't, you can't. You know, um, I'm overweight. I'm a chubby guy. You wouldn't know that I ran a marathon.
Hmm.
But it starts with, 1K, 5K, I did the Tough Mudder. It starts with, I don't think I can do it, but you gotta work at it. So it doesn't, you don't pick up a guitar and play um, Led Zeppelin the first time. You've got to learn your chords, you got to learn this, and it takes those muscles. So you have to do it. And I think that's the thing is practice, practice, practice. And that you've got to set those goals and put a system in place to say, okay, yeah, maybe I can never write a book. Well, if you're not getting up every morning and say, I'm going to write 3 pages or I'm going to write 5 pages, you're right. You'll never write that book. But if you sit up every day and say, I'm going to write, then eventually the stuff that's coming out will start to look like a book.
Yeah, people always try and think of the finished piece, right? The masterpiece versus say all the little things along the way. You were talking about the marathon, and I remember I read this in a book a couple of years ago, and it really hit me. And it was somebody he bet somebody that one of his employees that they could run a marathon in 1 year from then, and she wasn't, she wasn't. It wasn't even in her foggiest idea, and she didn't have the frame to do so, like you were saying. And she's like, there's no way that's going to happen. He said, okay, well, here's how we're going to do it. Because we're going to break out that structured plan. We're going to work a system, and then you will be running a marathon 1 year from today. You could make it interesting. They made a bet on it. And he said, well, here's the first. She goes, well, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't. He goes, okay, well, first of all, let's just start with, like you said, a kilometer. He's like, drive it. She couldn't even do a kilometer. That in her head was like out of her head, right? So he's like, "Why don't you drive it first?" And then he goes, "Can you do that?" She goes, "Of course I can." And he's like, "Okay, so drive it." Because once you now have it in your head, now possibilities begin to form. Like, okay, well, how am I going to build up to that? And then it was like, then walk half of it, then walk the kilometer, then keep walking the kilometer for a bit. Then it was start to sprint a couple times, just do a couple trots in between, and then eventually, and to this day now, this is 10 years later, but she's ran in I think like 13 marathons. Like it's crazy.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Crazy, right? Like yeah, it was all started by that just breaking it down to that little bit, and all of a sudden your vision goes a little farther. You can the light shines a little further around the corner, so you know where you're going. Yeah, yeah, I
You,
love that. I love.
you never eat the elephant in one bite. This is the thing. Everyone's like, oh, no, you got to break it down and say, all right, I have this. So I do a course where I teach people how to take the knowledge in their head and write a book or create a course. And like it's very specific. And at first, people are very resistant. But when you start showing them how it works and the system works and they start taking that knowledge out, it changes. It's not, we don't have to write everything all at one point. This is this, we brainstorm here, we're doing this here, we're doing this here. And all of a sudden the pieces start to fit together. Not the
Yeah.
elephant in one bite. When you say I got to write a book or do a course, it's like, oh, that's a lot of work. I don't know where to start. So it's all right. I've got a plan. I've got a map. I got a progress. Here's step by step what we need to do it. And I'm going to help you through it. And I think that's what people need. Exactly what you said. You're going to, how do I go from here to there? And here's the best system and the tools and the templates and the handholding to take you from here to there so that you're never feeling like, oh my God, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah, because when you look at the whole journey, it scares the crap out of you. It's kind of like when I mean, we've all done that where we've, walked along a beach or we've done some sort of walk, and then you got caught, you got lost in it. You were thinking in your thoughts, or you were talking to somebody, and then you stopped and turned and looked back, and you're like, "Holy smokes, we've gone a long way," right? But if you said at the beginning, "Let's go over there," you probably wouldn't have done it because you're like, "That's too far. I don't want to go that far." But like once you're in it, and you get that next step, just that next step, and then one day you lift your head, and then all of a sudden you're like, can't believe how far I am. Well, now I know I can do more because I've gotten this far, So no, I love that. I love that analogy.
Although I don't encourage this technique, I use it for myself. I lie to myself. And for this exact reason, exactly what I'm saying, I'm just going to go walk to the coffee store. I'm just going to go get a coffee. But once I have that coffee in my hand and it's a nice day and I'm walking, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to walk around the block and I'm going to do this. But if I started by saying I'm going to walk around the block, no way, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to go for a coffee.
Yeah. That was so in High Park. I used to in Toronto here in High Park. I used to jog, and everybody thought I was crazy because I do the whole loop, and I would always take the route where I was going up the hill to the Grandier Cafe. And everybody's like, "You do that? Like we always do the route we're going down the hill." I'm like, "I know." They're like, "And that's three-quarters of the way through your run. Like that's crazy." And I said, they said, "How do you do it?" I said, "I never look at the top. That's how." I said, like, each crack in the pavement, I'm like, "I'm
Yeah.
gonna run to that, and I'm gonna quit." I'm gonna run to that
Yeah.
and I'm gonna quit.
That's right.
And eventually when I'm up there and like all of a sudden I'm at the top again, I'm like, okay. So yeah, it's a good little hack. I love that. I love that. Um, so tell me, Craig, what's your winning routine? If you say like this is the perfect day for Craig when it comes to productivity, moving the needle type of stuff, what's the perfect routine for you?
Well, I'm usually up really early. I have a couple of coffees. I'm reading the news and the latest tech stuff, getting caught up in my email. And then I jump and I do my social media. So I plan the day of the week depending what's going on because there's new podcast episodes coming out every day. So that's kind of my coffee routine. I'm checking out what's happening and I do my social media. I use the ideal situation for me would be having two or three client meetings in a day. Um, but in between that, I'm working on my course. I do everything. Like I do our website, I do everything. So I've got a list of stuff that's a mile long. Uh, but I sit back and say, all right, the things that really need to happen right now, okay, I need to finish this course and then get it up for sale and then do the marketing stuff for it. I don't need to do these other things right now. They can wait. So it's the planning piece and then start working on those things. So I do a lot of work out of Starbucks. My local was a beautiful patio in the summertime, and I thank the Lord every day that I get to sit on the patio and have coffee and do half my day's work in a beautiful environment. And I'm not stuck in a cubicle. I'm not, commuting to Toronto every day. And so perfect day is, working with a couple clients, going through that. Then I've got to fix my website. I'm launching some new CRM strategy. I'm working on a new automation tool to automate my workflow to tweak it more and more. As I mentioned, I'm always I'm doing a lot of podcasts and a lot of videos and stuff. And that in order to do that, you really need to streamline your workflow. Otherwise, it'll become overwhelming. So the more I can do pre-work, get that stuff streamlined so that booking guests, creating the graphics, creating the questions, doing all the stuff happens quickly and automatically, then the more better conversations I can have rather than having to figure out how to do all those things. So it's tweaking and basically if I can make one tweak in my uh, workflow every day, that's kind of a perfect day.
That's, yeah, makes sense. Yeah. Relieving that bog down, right? And start making it easier. Yeah.
Well,
What you
just
mentioned,
as an example, I just want to say this because this is embarrassing, but people need to understand. I'm looking at my inbox right now. I have 20,674 unread emails.
I'm probably up there with you if I look at it.
So a perfect day for me is not, worrying about that.
Yeah.
A lot of people get caught up with that, and I'll miss the email. I will, and I'm sorry. Just bug me. I remind people, if I didn't get back to you in a couple of days, send another email. It happens because things are going. But when you worry about inbox zero or other things, that means you're not having your day. And it's great if that's if your process is getting things done, inbox zero, here we go, and that is your happy place, all the power to you. My happy place is working with entrepreneurs and making my workflow a bit better every day, not worrying about all this, is this spam or not spam in my
Yeah, no, makes sense. I'm the same way. There's just stuff that just comes in that just doesn't need my attention, and I hopefully, yeah, I don't miss. I can't miss on email, but at the same time, I'm very much. There's just stuff that I know is not important, and people. We have this saying. I teach my team this: your inbox is someone else's agenda, it's not yours.
Yes,
So
exactly.
like you come in with a day plan, and so many people flip that open and then go or they start their day there and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is a 2 second thing I can get off my plate. And all of a sudden, well, now you're focused, you're Zen, whatever you want to call it, like that you came into the day with to get, tackle that big thing that's kind of hanging on and just doing a little bit of that, and that progress has just gone out the window because it's going to be very hard. You're going to get into those distraction techniques and avoidance techniques because now you've gotten out of mode, and that people underestimate that, I think. The power of your whatever your energy in the moment in being able to tackle something, stay focused on it and don't get distracted by it, because there's so many things that we have that can distract us, and if you lock it down, it can help you in a big way.
Getting
Yeah.
into flow and then staying there.
Yeah.
It bugs me when you're in flow and then someone decides that they gotta bring you
Yeah.
out of it for some reason. But yes, get into that
Yeah.
flow and shut out those distractions for a while.
I Someone gave me the tip years ago, and it was just shut all your notifications off on your phone. So I don't even know my text. I don't even see the number that there's a text there. I actually have to physically hit it, and then I see the texts that are outstanding. So my team at the beginning was like, oh, it's so annoying. Like we can never get you. And my ringer's always off. And it's like, we can never get you. I'm like, I will get back to you when I have the time. Like I have it all booked out to do that. And it's just, I said, it's freeing. Like your
Yes.
mind's not scattered. You're not racing around. I'm not like, I'm able to be kind of as present as I can be. And then I coached them to do the same thing over time. And they were unwilling at the beginning, but then many of them started to adopt it. And then they're like, hey, I know what you mean. My stress levels have gone down. I feel like I'm getting way more productivity done. I'm like getting things like I have more time free to do other things that I want to do that I didn't have before. It's like, yeah, because you're not trying to do, 10 things at once, which is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done something similar where I've moved everything with notifications to the second page of my iPhone so I can look at the first screen. It doesn't have my phone icon, doesn't have my email icon, doesn't have. So I swiped to my second screen to see all those things.
Got to actually physically do it. Yeah, yeah, I love it. Just before we go, I know you've talked a lot about you working in a podcast and things like that. Who do you listen to the most now? What podcast might you be listening to, or anyone that you're following or something like that that's kind of keeps you locked in your mindset?
Well, there's a few, I guess, from entrepreneurship point of view, everyone should be taking a look at things like Y Combinator. They've got a great YouTube channel. Gary V, if you're trying to build your brand and understand entrepreneurship and marketing, take a look at him. Stanford's got great Stanford Graduate School of Business, got a bunch of great lectures. Actually, if you look up Startup School Ryerson, I think it's Startup School Ryerson, not Startup School Toronto Metro University, because it's been around for a while. They've got a bunch of free videos with a lot of mentors and experts that you can learn. TED Talks are good. Um, I listen to a bunch of different podcasts, but I'm all over the map on different things because it just depends on, because I'm, like I said, I'm doing Silicon Scoop, which is a bunch of the latest tech news And then I'm doing science breakthroughs as well as the startup stuff. So it really depends. So there's a lot of good startup stuff out there. But just, if you have questions, feel free to email me, Craig at TorontoStarts.com. I'm happy to send you links to podcasts or other resources that are interesting that I follow.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that was my last question for you, man. Is share with us, where can they find you? Where can we find you?
If you want to see me in person, go to startupdrinksto.com. That's where we put our monthly networking events where we host them downtown Toronto. I'm not sure when this will go out, but there's August, September, October, November. Yeah, it's every month, I think, from now on. I think we just skipped July. TorontoStarts.com is almost where everything's at. You can find all our podcasts and what there and links to me. I'm the startup coach on LinkedIn. Everywhere else, it's at Toronto Starts, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Just go to TorontoStarts.com if you want. There's a little chat. Click the chat, and you're talking to me on my phone. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Direct link to the man. How do you like that? That's awesome. Listen, Craig, I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed hearing your insights. I love talking this stuff and loved hearing your take on a lot of it, the way you think, the way you operate, and obviously your passion for what you do for people really, really shows in how you come across and how you talk about it. It's I love seeing people like that and doing what they love and helping others, putting the hand out to help others be able to do that and lift them up and get them to their next level too. And you obviously do that in spades. So I really appreciate you taking the time today to spend this time with me. And I look forward to connecting with you more, man.
Thanks for having us, Brad. And I guess I'm seeing you next week, and we'll chat in person.
All right. Sounds good. All right, Craig. Thanks a lot. Take
Bye.
care.